All right, all right. Welcome everybody to the workshop. I'm Peter Alessandria, and I invite you to be bigger than you think you are. If it's your first time here, welcome. We will have more people joining us as the evening goes on. Please keep your microphone muted when you're not speaking. So I'm going to jump in here. Michelle, did you want to share a little victory that you had this week?
Sure. I'm taking a home health aid class, and I'm halfway through it. My final is Friday, and then the hands-on course is next week, 2 days from 9 to 2. So it's intense, but I'm doing it, right?
Woohoo! Good
I said
job.
to myself last year I wasn't going to be able to, and I ended up taking a walk with my neighbor, and the both of us, she's 60 and I'm 40 something, and the both of us came out with saying the same thing. Our biggest holdback of us not taking the next step was the fear.
Yeah. It's chapter
And
4.
because she was doing it, I said, okay, since you're doing it, I said, no, I couldn't do it last year. I'm just going to do it too. And, we're both, talking back and forth, messaging each other, sharing our, input with each other, and, our encouraging words. And, it's okay. And she's like, after this, we're going to go out for a drink.
Good, congratulations. And
Thank
that's
you.
also good because you're not doing it alone. So I think I
No, I'm
mentioned
not.
this. Yeah, I think I mentioned this the first night that we met. For me, it's been so important to have people that I can lean on, that support me, that I support, that encourage me, that I'm accountable to. So that's great.
There's
Congratulations,
not many
Michelle.
people I feel in this world that are like that. I think this world is very competitive. And I just see that, especially in the town I live in. I don't know. And I see
They're
other
out there.
groups.
You'll find them.
Like I said, I had that one neighbor who was very much a cheerleader of mine, but I lost her. But I found some more friends through COVID. During COVID, you have all this time you're home. And I've made friends with other neighbors. So
Great. Congratulations.
thank you.
Anybody else? All right. So let's jump into our topic for this evening. So we've actually been dancing around this issue, this topic, since the beginning, and I'm stressing it again because for me in my own life, I'm learning the power of the mind, the power of belief, the power of thought. So we are who we think we are, and the good news is we can change that. Now, for many of us, again, I think we said this last week, there's certain areas of our lives where things are working, things are good. We don't need to make any changes there. That's great. It's also to recognize that we don't ignore common sense in life. So if I want to see myself differently, I don't suddenly get up one morning and decide I'm going to walk off the edge of a cliff. I still use common sense. But what we want to do is begin to understand or take a look at where our thinking is not serving us, where it's holding us back, where it's actually creating more problems than it's solving. All right, so we want to begin to be aware of that. And the thing that we want to do is look at all those situations where we believe that something is true and to begin to question that if it's not serving us. Again, if it's serving us, great. But when we begin to see the challenges that come up in life and we get to that point, we want to listen for when we say, oh, that's just the way it is, or that's just the way I am, or I'll never change, or that other person will never change. Those are the thoughts that keep us stuck, really keep us stuck. So what we want to do is begin to question that. Whatever we think is true and is not serving us, begin to look at that and ask the question. I've done this to myself out loud. I've said, is that really true? Is it really true that I don't have enough talent to get a photo published in a newspaper? Is it really true that I'm going to mess up on this job for this client? I have to begin to notice those thoughts, and that's really the first part. We have to become aware and then question the thoughts that are not serving us. All right? I want to play an excerpt from the audiobook like I did last week that addresses this, and then we'll come back and talk more about it. All right, so this is an excerpt from chapter 1. Stress. We feel stress when we focus on things we don't have any control over. In the above example, the decision to fire us, who made it, how they made it, and why is beyond our control. Likewise, our personal financial situation at the moment we lose the job may also be beyond our immediate ability to change. Thus, giving our attention to any of those things will create stress. Focusing on something we can't change reinforces a sense of powerlessness, and it's this sense of powerlessness that lies at the basis of all stress. On the other hand, focusing on things we can change has the potential to reduce our anxiety. If, as we just said, we have the ability to change how we see ourselves, then in the job loss example, this means we can consciously cultivate more positive thoughts. I got this, or something good will come from this, or I can figure this out, are examples of more constructive thinking that can begin to shift how we see ourselves in the situation. Likewise, and perhaps most importantly, we want to avoid making ourselves wrong for our mistakes. Many people blame themselves for things like losing a job. We naturally think it's our fault. If only we were better workers, we'd still be employed. The truth is, we don't always know why what happens happens. We could have been stellar performers and still get let go. And even if we did contribute to the problem, what we want to do is learn from our mistakes, not beat ourselves up for them. Self-recrimination can add even more stress to what may already be a difficult situation. I've noticed in my own life that just being nicer to myself can sometimes make a huge difference in how things go. Some people may object to using positive affirmations like those I mentioned a moment ago. They say we're just making them up, that they have no basis in reality. We'll address those and related concerns later. For now, while I agree it may take some effort to shift our internal self-image, it should be obvious that focusing on more positive thoughts and beliefs about ourselves will help reduce our stress. Having less stress will, in turn, make us more effective at dealing with whatever problems we have. The problem lies within. Now, if it's true that our self-image determines everything, this means the source of a problem lies in how we see ourselves and not in the external events and circumstances of our lives. This is because how we react is determined by who we think we are relative to that situation. Our response is always a function of our internal self-image and not what's happening outside of us. Accordingly, we can say, the situation is never the problem. The problem is always and only how we see ourselves in that situation. This may be hard for some of us to accept. We've spent a lifetime looking outside ourselves for the source of our problems. We'll talk about why this is so shortly, but for now, notice this is actually good news. If we can almost never change the situation, but we can always change how we see ourselves, then it's possible to transform a negative event into a positive one. By deliberately choosing to see ourselves in a more positive way, we take our power back. Taking our power back alleviates the sense of powerlessness many of us experience in challenging situations. At a minimum, this can lead to better results in whatever problems we're facing today. At a maximum, it could lead to a whole new life. By saying the problem can be found in how we see ourselves, we're saying that the problem lies within us. It's not in the outer circumstances or events we encounter. This is because information from the outside world must first pass through our internal filter of who we think we are before we can react to it. In the job loss example, as the knowledge that we've been laid off enters our consciousness, the mind tries to make sense of it. It can only do this by examining the information within the context of what it already knows. What it already knows is how we've experienced similar situations in the past. The mind thus uses our past experiences to build up and/or reinforce our self-image, and that self-image then becomes the filter through which all new data must pass. By processing the information in this way, the mind assigns a meaning to the current situation, and it is to this meaning which we react. Of course, all this happens very quickly, within milliseconds. Yet, it can be proven by the simple fact that our reactions will be different depending on how we see ourselves. Let's look again at the job loss example. As we've already said, if how we see ourselves is as someone who can handle the situation, we'll have one reaction. If who we think we are is someone who can't, we'll have a very different one. It's the exact same event, i.e. losing our job, yet we have a very different reaction based on our internal filtering process. Thus, we can say that how we react to something is always determined by how we see ourselves rather than by the thing itself. Again, this is really important since we often can't change the situation, but we can always change how we see ourselves. All right, so we talked last week about stress, okay? And we said it's when we focus on things we have no control over, it gives rise to that feeling of powerlessness, that feeling of anxiety. So by consciously and directly and deliberately changing the direction of our thought, we can shift that emotion. We can shift how we see ourselves in that situation. Now, the thing I want to talk about, which I mentioned in the audiobook just now, is, let me find it here, is the way we process information. So the first thing to remember is, and I'm not the first person who said this, we give everything all the meaning that it has for us. Okay, so we're constantly interpreting the world, and we're constantly using our subjective interpretations to direct our actions, to direct our reactions, and it's that meaning that we want to be aware of. It's not, you can see, we always react to the meaning that we give the situation or the event rather than to the event itself. All right, so we're one step removed from reality. We see things the way we see them, and then we interpret it based on our prior experience, and more importantly, based on who we think we are in that situation. So it's important to remember that we give everything all the meaning that it has for us, and then what we're actually reacting to in any situation is that meaning. Now, again, this is really good news because we often can't change the situation, but we can always change how we see ourselves. And when we change how we see ourselves in that situation, we give the situation a different meaning. All right? Now, by bringing some conscious awareness to all of this, we don't have to rely on our habitual ways of responding to life. Again, if it's working for you, if your habitual way of responding is working, that's great. But what we want to do is be aware of when we feel stressed, when we feel powerless, when we feel anxious, we can work backwards and say, okay, so I'm reacting to the meaning that I'm giving this situation rather than to the situation itself. How can I change the meaning? And I'm going to suggest that for me, I found the best way to change the meaning is to change how I see myself, who I think I am in that situation. Now, I put together a little diagram here. It's what I did all afternoon. And so this is my interpretation of the way we process information, all right? So we have a stimulus from the outside world. It's something we see, something we hear, something enters our perceptual realm. That information enters into our consciousness, and then it immediately goes into this internal filtering process that we have. And that filtering process is essentially who we think we are. The mind processes that data, that incoming data, and says, okay, this is just like that time in last summer when I was at the beach and something happened. Or, we rely on past experiences to decide how to respond to a present situation. And it's always through this internal filter that we have of who we think we are. All right? And then after that filter, we come to a meaning, we come to a conclusion, we have our interpretation of the event or situation, and then we react to it. All right? And so now I have a tree and, something beautiful is the meaning that we give the thing we see. I mean, this could just as easily have been something not so beautiful or something not so pleasant, but it works the same way. So all the information from our outside world passes through this internal filter that we have. Now, this becomes really important when we get to Chapter 2, when we talk about taking responsibility, and Chapter 3, when we get to talk about true power. So I wanted to lay the foundation for that now. It also reminds us that we're in charge of how we see the world. We're in charge of how we see ourselves. And when we begin to deliberately, consciously and deliberately choose thoughts, choose perceptions that serve us, we'll have a different experience of the world. All right, we'll come back to the exercises in a minute. So one of the examples that I give in the book is, let's say you lose your job. And I think maybe we talked about this last week. So what happens is you wake up, you get an email or you get a phone call or something, you have to go in and see the HR person, and they sit you down and they tell you, we're letting you go. And then so that's the incoming data, that's the situation, that's the incoming data. And then our mind begins to process that based on who we think we are. And again, as I said last week, sometimes when people find out they've been laid off from a job, they say, oh my God, what am I going to do? There'll never be another job like my last one. I'm too old to go look for a new job. You know, they have a negative reaction. Now, and the way they describe the event and the way they feel internally about the event tells us who they think they are in that situation. Now, the exact same event, somebody might say, oh my God, I'm free. I hated this place. I can't wait to get out of here. You know, they have a completely different reaction. Now, I would suggest the difference is how they see themselves in that situation. They're interpreting it's the exact same event. They've been let go from the same job. Maybe they worked in the same office as you. But they have an entirely different reaction. Or maybe you're the one who's excited about finally getting out of that place. So but the point is, one person sees themselves one way and the other person sees themselves in a different way. And the person who reacts positively probably has a self-image that says, this is going to work out. I'm going to find a way to make this work. I'm going to finally do what I want to do. I'm going to start my own business. They have a positive outlook based on who they think they are in relation to that situation. Again, I think I said this last week, everything is relational, all right? It's always how we see ourselves with respect to a particular situation, a particular event, a particular person. And again, as I've said a number of times now, it's often much easier to change who we think we are in the situation than it is to change the situation itself, all right? So the person who gets laid off from the job and comes home and says, oh my God, what am I going to do? That person has an opportunity to begin to consciously and deliberately change how they see themselves in that situation. We talked about positive affirmations. We talked about a vision statement. We talked about different tools we can use for that. All right? And the idea is to say, all right, so maybe there's some challenges. I don't know how this is going to go, but I trust that it's going to work out okay. I trust that I'm going to do what I need to do to take care of myself in this situation. You know, we find some positive way to begin to look at the same situation. Now, the other thing I said, and this relates directly to stress, we focus on what we have control over in that situation. So what I have control over in that situation is basically how I see myself. All right? I can't control the HR department. I can't control the company's decision-making process. I can't control my financial situation at that exact moment when I find out about being let go from the job. Focusing on any of that stuff in a negative way will create stress. All right? So the point is we're in charge and we get to choose, and we're always choosing how we see ourselves in any situation, meaning we're always choosing how we react or respond to that situation. And most of the time, we're doing it habitually, we're doing it unconsciously, we're doing it based on our past experiences. All right? So again, I really like this little diagram because it reminds me that what's causing my reaction in a given situation is not what's going on outside of me. It's not what's going on in that particular situation, that event. It's all passing through. Here's the thing. This is really hard to understand and sometimes accept. The world is meaningless. There is no inherent meaning in anything that we see. In fact, we don't even really know what anything is until we assign a meaning to it. You know, it's like I can look at a cup of coffee, and if I forget that I know what that cup of coffee is, that cup of coffee has I don't know what it is. It has no meaning for me. I'm assigning the meaning. I'm defining everything. I'm assigning the meaning to everything that I see and everything that I experience, which really puts us in charge. All right? Most people don't embrace that, but when we get to chapter 3, I'll talk about how that's how we get to exercise our true power in life. By consciously and deliberately choosing what we think, feel, say, and do in relation to each and every person, situation, condition, circumstance in our life. All right, so remember this little diagram. All right, so I think we're going to take the break a couple of minutes early. I'll just open it up real quick. Anybody have a question about any of that? Want to say anything about any of that? When we come back, let's look at these are the exercises that we were going to do for today. So when we come back, you guys will have a chance to answer these questions. We'll share on it. The first question is, as I mentioned earlier, the situation is never the problem. The problem is always and only how I see myself in that situation. So do you agree or disagree with that? Why? And give some examples. All right? And then the second exercise was describe at least 3 places in your life where you feel stuck. Identify any negative thoughts or beliefs about yourself, such as I'm not good enough, I don't have what it takes, no one is going to like me, etc. All right? And then what we want to do is we want to look at how would changing who we think we are in that situation, how we see ourselves, help us move forward. All right? So those were the exercises. Again, I'll give anybody a chance to say anything. Otherwise, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then when we come back, you guys will have a chance to share, and we'll go from there. All right, guys, we're back. So, let's go back to our exercises. So who wants to jump in? Who wants to tell us what they did for, let's start with number 1. Situation is never the problem. The problem is always and only how I see myself in that situation.
Right.
Do you agree or disagree? Why?
I would say I agree when I'm in my kind of in my right mind.
Right.
So I definitely agree in theory, and I would say there are times though when a situation will trigger a reaction, and it will definitely feel as if the situation is causing my reaction versus the other way around. So, just speaking like personally, I don't know if other folks on the call have kids. I have one daughter. She's kind of the light of my life, and she's out of the house now. But pretty much around her and what I perceive as her safety, I can really be triggered to, I try to work I've always, I thought that was my job as a mom, to work the situations to create that safety. So that would be an example where in fact, one of the things I'm already taking away from tonight is because right now safety is so much out of our individual control on many levels. The question of who am I in that situation where I'm feeling that anxiety around safety is a takeaway I've already gotten.
Let me ask you a question. Do you feel stress when you think about your daughter being out there in the world with what's going on?
Yes, I do. I do feel stress. I mean, that's the short answer. Yes. And so I have to work somewhere in your book. I was just thumbing through it, and you have the phrase work backwards. And so I have to work backwards from that. Okay, so like in this moment I'm feeling stressed. So let me take a step back and
how must I see myself in this situation to feel this way? Because as I talk about it in chapter, I think it's chapter 1 or chapter 2, our thoughts lead to our feelings lead to our words and actions, and our words and actions lead to the outcomes that we experience. So if I'm starting with negative thoughts, I'm going to have negative feelings. Right. And then those negative feelings are going to manifest physically, emotionally, and it's going to lead to the words I speak and the actions that I take. So by becoming more aware in the moment, or as you said, a lot of times for me, it's like something happens and it's like, it could be 2 days later and I'm like, oh my God, I was totally freaked out, working backwards. So how must I have seen myself in that situation? Who
Right.
must I think I am in relation to what's going on? Now, we're all getting, this is a master level or PhD level education right now in safety and security and feeling safe in the world. But for me, it's the same question. Obviously there are things I can't control, but I have to say my life, when I first heard about the pandemic and everything that was going on, I had no idea I would be where I am right now, doing what I'm doing right now. And it was really me beginning to just say, okay, so there's a lot of things that are outside of my control right now, but what's within my control? What can I control? What can I change? What do I have power over? Focus on that. And then, and try to bring some consciousness, some deliberateness to a positive or a more affirming way of looking at things. And that has really shifted my emotional state. And when my emotional state shifts, I've been so productive. I've been working on the audiobook. I've been working on the second edition of this book. I got all this set up, my workshops and everything. So a lot of positive stuff came. The first 3 weeks, I was a mess. I mean, I was just like, everything in this book kind of went out the window. It was like, but then I thought, okay, wait a second. So how, I worked backwards and began to take some of my power back, because we give our power away. We give our power away to situations. We give our power away to people. We give our power away to circumstances, conditions, events. And we're literally left feeling powerless. And when we feel powerless, chapter 4 in the book, I talk about fear. Fear, the way I define it, for me, fear is an emotional response to a perception of ourselves as powerless and or unlovable in a given situation. And what I'm finding is that I get to decide in every situation who I am, how I see myself. Doesn't mean I don't take care of myself. It doesn't mean I don't set boundaries with inappropriate people or inappropriate behavior. But actually, the more I do that, the more I take care of myself, the less powerless I feel. So I'm
think
gonna,
that makes sense.
yeah, I'll let you say whatever else you want to say about all that, Lori.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's it right now for me.
All right, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Who else?
I just want to mention, if you guys see me like moving around, it's only because my cat, who I thought was asleep, who would stay asleep, has woken up and is like sometimes nibbling at my ankles. So I'm just trying to
You're doing the
maneuver.
cat dance.
Right.
All right,
I
good.
don't know. Peter, I'm here. Am I on mute or not mute?
I can hear you, Barbara.
Oh, okay. All right. So I had my situation with, me and my computer and getting my bulletin done. And I'm there by myself. And I always found it to be, what would be the word? I work in a rectory and the church has to have a bulletin every week. So I was always doing it and it felt so tremendously stressful, but I always did it. I probably don't give myself enough credit to say that I have never failed at anything that badly. Like I always said, how is a church going to function without a bulletin? And it always had a bulletin. All right. So, new job, new bulletin, new situation. And I got it done. Monday, Tuesday, I got it done. I have to send it off. I can send it off in the afternoon. And probably about 11:30 on a Tuesday, I have somebody who walks in who wants to put something in the bulletin. And I was just like, how does this happen all the time to me? I was like, no, right away, no. And it's funny. The only thing I will say to you is that when that happened, I said to myself, because I know you said it, I can handle this. I can do this. And that's all I had to keep on saying to myself, because I don't know what else I was going to say to myself. It was just awful. Like, you like go, I understand life, and life has these things in the last minute. What you're saying almost is like, not that you have to be prepared for all these last minute things, but they sure do happen. And I don't know what the word is to describe it. I said I could handle it. I have been doing it. See how it worked out. He knew, the person who wanted it done, he knew he was kind of putting a kink in it, and he did everything he could. And he actually said the words, "We can do this." I said, "Okay, we can do this." And we got it done. So if that's a success story, I used your words. But it feels like, to me, until the next time. And I don't know I don't feel good about that. I don't know if I could ever be that person that no matter what happens, or that'll always be okay. It's always gonna,
Look at that belief. Look at that
Okay.
belief right there.
Okay. I don't know if I could ever be that person.
Those are the beliefs I'm talking about. That's the stuff that we have to start questioning.
Okay.
Everything that we think is true that places us at a disadvantage, or everything that we think is true which is a negative, okay? The truth is, you don't really know. And all the stuff that we tell ourselves all day is stuff that we're just making up anyway. We talked about this, I think, the first week. We make up all this stuff and then we say it over and over and over again. If any of you guys are familiar with the law of attraction, they say a belief is just a thought that you keep thinking.
And then you're right, because I have to be attracting it, because I really,
Well, that's the
there
next
was
part.
something about that. Yeah.
That's the next part, because our thoughts, our emotional state, it attracts to us everything that is in congruence with that.
But it
We
seems
attract-
very negative.
Sorry?
I'm not attracting the good, I'm attracting the negative.
Well, no, wait a second. Let's look at what really happened, because you're telling a story now, too. So this person came in at the last minute, all right? Instead of saying, I'm screwed or whatever, I mean, obviously you had a little bit of that, but you had enough consciousness in the moment to what? To say, I can handle this, I can do this, right? And then you had a person who mirrored that back to you. He actually said to you, what did he say? He said, we can do this.
Yes, he did. Yes,
That's
he
law
did.
of attraction.
Okay, there you go. And that's
That's
positive.
something-
I always
That's
see the
positive.
negative. Yeah, and I always see the negative.
Well,
Terrible.
you're like most of us. We all, that's kind of the default. And a lot of times it's a protective mechanism. It's a defense mechanism, because when we prepare for the worst and then it doesn't happen, we think we're good. All right, the worst didn't happen, but we miss out on what the really good could have been, what something wonderful that really could have happened.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So
true.
it's just beginning to shift our thinking, and thoughts they become, if you know anything about, and I'm definitely not a biologist or anything like that, but what happens is in our brain, the neurons, the dendrites in the neural nerves in our brain, they literally form connections, and it becomes like a highway. And when we think the same thoughts, the impulses follow that highway, and it becomes more and more ingrained, more and more entrenched. All right? So by repeating the same thing, negative or positive, over and over again, and then having experiences that reflect those thoughts. See, here's the thing. Most of us think, well, I know I'm not good enough because I got fired from this job, and that girl broke up with me, and I lost all my money in the stock market, and we have a whole list of evidence that proves that we're not good enough, we don't have what it takes. But what we don't realize is that the experience reflects the thoughts and the beliefs that we have about ourselves. It's like the thoughts come first, and then the experience follows. Now, again, we'll talk more about this in later chapters and in later workshops. The thing we have to do is understand we have some momentum going in a particular direction, and for many of us in certain areas of our lives at least, that momentum can be kind of negative. So, one bad thing after another can kind of happen. It can kind of snowball. So the point is, it takes a little time to turn the ship. All right? If you know anything about an ocean liner or one of those big cargo ships out in the ocean, when they want to make a turn, they have to start like 2 miles ahead of where they want to actually turn, because the ship is so big and it has so much momentum going in one direction that they have to start turning 2 miles before where they want to turn. So we got the same thing going with our thinking. We got a lot of momentum in a particular direction. So it may take a little bit of time to change, to steer the ship. All right, so just be aware of that. And what's the other part of the equation? Forgive ourselves. We got to forgive ourselves.
You always ask me that, and I never give you the answer. Someday I will. Isn't that funny?
Right.
You have said that to me before, and I'm like, huh? Okay.
It's the new F word. It's the new F word.
Right. Yes. Okay. I'll remember it now.
So even if I go down that old road again, all right, even if I go into that negative spiral, even if I have all those negative thoughts and beliefs, at some point I get to decide it's bad enough that I have those thoughts, but then what's worse is then I beat myself up for it. Then I make myself wrong and I say, you shouldn't think that way. What's wrong with you? I mean, all the negative shaming voices come in. All right? So if I can trust myself, self-confidence, a trusting relationship with myself, I think that's in chapter 6. If I can trust myself not to beat myself up every time I go down that wrong road, then it becomes easier and easier to turn the ship, because I don't have all that baggage. I'm literally dragging all that negative. That creates more momentum in the wrong direction, all the negative thoughts and beliefs, and then the beating myself up for it. So there's no such thing as, I think this is chapter 5, there's no such thing as a wrong choice, a wrong choice or bad decision, or bad choice or wrong decision if I do two things. All right, number one is learn from my mistakes. All right, some of the, I listen to a lot of interviews with business people, politicians, people who are out there in the world, and a lot of them will say, my biggest mistake was my greatest learning opportunity. It completely turned my business in a new direction or turned my life in a new direction. I learned from my mistake and it actually helped me. And then the second thing is to forgive ourselves for our mistakes. Thomas Edison, the story, 10,000 times to make the light bulb, and when somebody asked him, he said, I have not failed. He said, I have just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. So that's what we're doing. We're finding ways that don't work and we're adjusting. All right, we're changing who we think we are in the moment. We're a work in progress. I've been working on this stuff for 30 years and I can still go down the rabbit hole, The difference now is I get myself out faster and I'm nicer to myself in the process. What else do you want to say, Barb?
No, that's fine. That's good. Nope. I like that, that song is great. If you could play that in your head all day long, I think we'd be a lot happier.
I got it on my phone.
I know. I'm going to have to put it on my phone. Definitely is a wonderful song.
And I sing it out loud.
Yeah,
and I cannot sing, guys. I mean, I have the worst singing voice. But I sing it. And this is what you got to get. I had to understand that I am always, all day long, I'm affirming something. And I can either affirm something positive or I can affirm something negative. But my mind is always going. Mm-hmm. And if you read A Course in Miracles talks about the mind never sleeps, The mind never stops. It's constantly creating. That's what our dreams are at night. The mind is constantly going. The thing we want to do is begin to consciously direct it. We want the mind to work for us, not against us. So, and it takes some work. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I say in the book, simple but not easy. So it takes some effort. It takes falling off the horse a few times, but eventually it becomes more and more of that. We're remapping those neural networks. We're changing the direction of the impulses in our brain and into our body. By reprogramming. We're basically reprogramming. I joke sometimes that I've spent the last 25 years undoing the first 25 years of my life.
That
Literally,
I understand.
literally reprogramming.
Yeah.
But my own opinion, other people have different opinions, totally okay with me. But my opinion is, I have to bring, it's bringing conscious, deliberate, willful change. Now, I talk about in chapter 5. If you haven't read the book yet, this is a little spoiler, but I'm gonna give it to you anyway. In chapter 5, I talk about how I'm right-handed, but I do everything with my left hand. And basically, when I first got into recovery for codependence 25 years ago, I thought, oh my God, how am I ever going to change all these codependent behaviors I have? My people-pleasing, saying yes when I want to say no, low self-esteem, no boundaries, emotional caretaking, enmeshment. I had a whole list of all these negative things that I did, and up until that point, I thought that's just the way you do relationships. And then I started to learn about codependency, and I got into a 12-step program actually for it. And I was like, oh my God, I mean, how can I ever change all of this? This is who I am. This is how I do life. How can I possibly change all this? And so I thought,
Oops.
Whoa. I thought, what's a good metaphor? It felt like this stuff was so ingrained, it was so part of who I was that I could never change it. So, again, spoiler alert, one day I decided, well, what's something similar? What's something deeply ingrained, so much so that I think it's a part of who I am as a person? Let me see if I can change that. And the thought just came into my head one day. What about being right-handed? What could be more deeply ingrained and more a part of who I am than being right-handed? And so I set out on a course to see if I could break the habit. Great book by Dr. Joe Dispenza, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. So I thought, can I break the habit of being right-handed by doing everything with my left hand? And for the first 6 months, most days I didn't even remember that I was trying to do this. And I would be halfway through a meal and I'm using my right hand for the fork and I'm like, oh shit, I'm supposed to be using my left hand. It was just total, I didn't even remember that I was trying to do this. And then eventually, slowly I would remember. And more and more I would start to do things with my left hand. And the first time I shaved with my left hand, my hand was shaking. I was like, oh my God, am I going to cut myself, So I had to be very conscious. I had to be very present. I had to be very in the moment. But I kept at it, and I kept at it, and I kept at it. And eventually, I became more and more aware, more and more conscious, and it became more and more, I'll use the word natural for me to use my left hand for things. To the point where somebody said to me, a couple of people said to me, I never knew you were left-handed. And I just smiled and said, I'm not. I'm right-handed, but I do everything with my left hand. And they had a very confused look on their face, and that was the end of the conversation. But I knew I was making progress. It was like, oh, okay, so I can do this. I can change something as deeply ingrained and inherent in who I am as right-handedness. I can change that. And then what happened was, and then I overcame the lack of coordination. I'm still not as coordinated with my left hand as I am with my right. But when it comes to doing things like brushing my teeth, shaving, eating, doing the dishes, whatever, the mouse on my computer, I do my left hand, and to the point, it's become so comfortable to the point where now if I pick up the fork with my right hand, it feels unnatural. It feels odd. It feels uncomfortable. All right? Now, maybe you all think I'm crazy. Maybe I am crazy. Maybe I have too much time on my hands. I don't know. But the point is, it was like, oh, so even something as deeply ingrained in me as being right-handed can be changed with some conscious awareness, with some willpower, with some deliberateness, with being present in the moment. Every time I sat down to eat for the first 6 months, I had to stop and say, okay, I know there's something I have to do here. Oh, I remember, I'm going to use my left hand for my fork and my knife or whatever. I know, I'm nuts, but it was like, it's been, and my recovery from codependence was the same thing. It was like, okay, I'm going to go talk to my boss now. I remember that I feel really low self-esteem, and I feel like he's more valuable, and he's more important than me, or maybe it's a client, and I say, all right, I have to remember that that's not who I am and not who I want to be in this situation. Who I want to be in this situation, I want to see myself as his equal. I want to have healthy boundaries. If he says something inappropriate, I want to know that I can take care of myself. I had to go into the situation. I talk about this in a couple places in the book. It's setting an advance intention. So if I know I'm going to have a difficult encounter, instead of just walking in there and winging it, I'm going to stop and I'm going to actually, in my head or on paper, or I'm going to call somebody up on the phone and role play. Gee, I got to talk to this client, and he's always haggling on the price, and I always give in. Can I talk to you? Can we role play? I call a friend or whatever. Can we role play? You be him, I'll be me. Let's do this. So I have some advanced preparation. I have some advanced intention before I go into that difficult situation. So in the moment, I'm more conscious, I'm more present, I'm more aware, and it's in those moments, those little tiny moments, when I make a new choice, that my whole experience changes. So and here's the thing, guys, most of my life, I didn't want to take responsibility for who I was in that situation with that client or my boss or whatever. I wanted to have a negative experience and then go tell everybody what a jerk they are. So my intention, when I get really clear on it, my intention was not to have a positive experience, it was to have a negative experience. I tell the story, and I want to hear from other people, so this is going to be the last story for now. When I first moved into a new apartment in Los Angeles in the mid-2000s, and they were the cable companies, it was like, I forget who it was, Comcast or somebody. The cable companies were just bringing internet, modems and wireless internet connectivity into people's homes. Before that it was just the telephone. You had to use a telephone line to get your internet. So, and in the early days, there were a lot of equipment problems. There were all kinds of problems. So the guy came and he set it up and he said it's going to work great. And certainly by the next day it wasn't working at all. And and the guy came back and he said, okay, it works great. And he left, and the next day it didn't work at all. So I called up Comcast and I said, I'm so frustrated. I said, you promised me this and it's not working. And I said, I want you know, 2 months free internet service, and I want free cable for the next month, and I want, you know, I had this whole list of things, and I want somebody to come to, a different guy, because it was the same guy who kept coming back. I want a different guy coming back. And the poor woman on the other side of the phone, you know, she was absorbing all of this, and she said, you know, by the time I was done, she was like, yes, 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 yes. She said yes to everything that I wanted. And I don't know if it was just to get me off the phone, but she gave me everything I wanted. So I hung up the phone, and I realized I was disappointed. I didn't want what I said I wanted. I wanted to feel victimized. I wanted to feel unfairly treated. Course in Miracles says, beware of the temptation to perceive yourself unfairly treated. That was how I lived my life. So when she gave me everything I want, it was like, no, I don't want that. I want you to victimize me. I want you to treat me unfairly so I can tell everybody what jerks Comcast is. So I can continue to feel the way that I normally feel. Again, Dr. Joe Dispenza, he talks about we teach our bodies how to react based on our emotional responses. And it becomes an addiction. The body craves, the cells crave that feeling of being victimized, that feeling of being unfairly treated, that feeling of, oh, they're not going to like me, that feeling of, oh, I'm not good enough, oh, I don't have what it takes. It becomes a physiological reaction in our body. It's more powerful than heroin. All right, I'm done. Who else wants to answer one of our questions? Janet, are you there? You're awfully quiet. Lynn,
I know
anybody?
quiet's not usually something that describes me. I know that's unusual.
Okay.
I was in the car and I'm just getting home and settling in, and so I will get on in a minute.
Okay.
I've been thoroughly enjoying it, and I'm just digesting and absorbing it all. Thanks.
All right, great. No pressure. Anybody else? How about our second question? So describe, let's see if we can get this up here. Describe at least 3 places where you feel stuck in your life and identify any negative thoughts or beliefs about yourself, such as, I'm not good enough, I don't have what it takes, no one's going to like me. And how would changing who we think we are in that situation help move us forward? Anyone?
Peter, it's Michelle. What you said about not thinking you're good enough and stuff like that, like with my picture taking, getting it out there to the library is like the first step. Like when I came to Summit that night and, I was trying to get ideas on maybe how to get stuff out, maybe, printing calendars or something. And I'm still sort of stuck because I get like feedback from people, oh, your photos are so nice or whatever, but I just don't know how to get started, get the ball rolling, but.
Well, so tell us what you've done that's different.
I think the first step was basically listening to another photographer at message. He's like, just put it out there on social media. So I put it out to the community forum, and a couple people saw it, and then they private messaged me and they said, oh, we're having something, for the library during quarantine. They're like, and they're like, just resubmit it. So I had a couple of them printed through Baylab Photo and framed, but because of quarantine, they can't hang them anywhere yet. So it's all going to be done, like, I guess, digitally on the library forum and I think the community forum. And like, that's the first step. And then I got feedback from other people with other things in my life that I'm doing. And they're like, why don't you do dog photography? I like pet photography, but I just don't know how to get started and make it professional.
So first of all, I just want to really acknowledge you, all right, Michelle, because I know how difficult it can be to put our work out there as a creative person. I mean, I sat on my couch for 3 years. It was 3 years before I could actually submit my work for shows, exhibitions, all of that. So I want to acknowledge you for that. And then I want to say, a couple of things. Number one, it's just, you're seeing, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so you tell me if this is true,
Sure.
but you're entertaining new ideas about yourself. You're seeing yourself differently.
I'm trying to use the words of the other people that see things positive about me and try to utilize that in my head. It's just going forward and trying to figure out the steps of how to make it legit.
That'll
That's
come.
the whole thing.
That's gonna come. I talk about this in, I think it's chapter 3. It's like sometimes we need additional resources, we need additional information, we have to do some research, we may need more training. It's not enough just to sit around and I'm a great photographer, I'm a great photographer. That's
Well,
actually
that's the
part of it.
thing. I can't use I bought myself a good camera, right, in Summit, an Nikon. And I took a photography class in college and I loved the professor, loved her. I got an A in the course. I totally forgot almost everything probably. Most of the pictures I post on Facebook, on my Facebook page, are all from my phone that I take. So I just need to, I was going to reconnect with some lady that before, it was right in March, and COVID came and I was supposed to meet up with her. She was going to give me a lesson on how to use my good camera. And here I am, I'm stuck, and I know there's all these like videos online and stuff, but I like to see things in person, and like when you go to a class or something, and it just hasn't happened with COVID.
All right, but this was the point I was going to make. So eventually all of that is going to fall into place because you wouldn't even be thinking about that if your predominant thoughts and beliefs about yourself was, well, why bother? Nothing's going to come from this. I'm not really any good anyway. The fact that you're even thinking, okay, I want to learn how to do this. I want to find out more information. Having those thoughts will attract those experiences, those people. So my point is this: if you start thinking positively about who you are, what you're capable of, then all that other stuff is going to fall into place. But if my predominant thought and belief is, why bother, nothing's going to come from this, then guess what? Nothing's going to come from this. So you're getting to decide right now what comes in terms of any additional training you need, any additional resources and all that. Now let me just tell you about my experience in actually showing my work. Okay? I had so much angst. I was so afraid of what people were going to think about me and my work. And I was just, every time I got into a show, it was all this stress, and I was just so worried, are they going to like it? Are they going to like me? And here's what I found, and I'm only speaking for myself, so maybe your experience will be different. Some people love my work. They think it's so great. They message me on Facebook, I love this. You're such a wonderful photographer. You're the best. People say to me on Facebook, you're the best New York City photographer. We love you, And that's great. I love that. It's wonderful. Some people hate my work, all right? And it was very hard to accept that at first. Now, what I found is that has nothing to do with me. That's about them. Okay? If somebody actually doesn't like me or my work, and they don't really know me or whatever, then it's a projection of them, of how much they like or don't like themselves. So
Gotcha.
some people love my work, some people hate my work. Most people are in the middle, and actually most people, honestly, Michelle, most people don't care either way. They're so busy doing something else with their lives. So I'm going to save you a lot of angst and just say, some people are going to love your work. They're going to tell you how wonderful it is. Some people are going to say you stink, all right? And most people are not going to care either way, all right? here's the hard part, okay? I had to stop relying on what I think everybody else thinks about me, and
That's
I had to decide for myself how I feel about myself, and that was the hardest thing in the world. Because my whole life, the way I felt about myself was based on how I thought everybody else thought of me.
that's how that I hold a lot of that true to myself as well.
So I'm going to save you some angst on this one. Some people are going to love your work, some people are not going to love your work, most people are not going to give a shit either way. So just go and enjoy it.
Okay.
Do your thing, put it out there, and decide for yourself that you're good enough, that you have what it takes. And go where the love is. This was the other thing I learned. It was like, don't try to convince the haters, why they should like you or why they should like your work. All right? Just let it go. Go where the love is, And in honesty, I mean, I get so much more positive feedback. The negative feedback I get is really this much, and positive feedback is this much, but I would focus on this. It was always focused on this instead of this.
Yeah. I hear you. But why do it seems like I gravitate toward the negative than focusing on the positive.
Because of who I think I am. And when I change how I see myself, when I change how I feel about myself, when I change my whole orientation in life, I don't look at this anymore. If there's a negative comment, I don't even read it. I glance at it, negative. And if somebody is persistent with negative comments, I just block them.
Oh.
And so it's gone. I don't have
There you go.
I don't give it my attention. Now again, in chapter 7, all right, chapter 7 is forgiveness. All right, it's the longest chapter in the book. Let's see if you guys can see this. Can you see it? Forgiveness. All right, I have a whole story in chapter 7 about dealing with haters on Facebook. All right, I had 2 haters. All right, and this is a story. And by forgiving them in both situations, and by not taking their comments personally, by letting their comments be about them instead of making them about me, I actually turned both of those situations into something positive for me. One actually turned into close to $20,000 in income for me, all because I didn't take it personally and because I forgave the guy and I went through a whole thing with him. He became a customer of mine, and then he referred me to a much bigger company that I did a really nice a license deal with for my photos. And the initial contact from this guy was he went after me on a Facebook group, a New York City Facebook group, with photos like this, saying, oh, they're not real, they're photoshopped, he's full of shit, These were his public comments about my photos. All right? And because I take my own advice, I turn that into a 5-figure license deal. Instead of blocking him, I said, wait a second, maybe I can learn something from this experience. Maybe I can apply some of these principles. And I'm actually friendly with the guy now, to this day. He's actually a really nice guy. He was just projecting all his own self. You got to read the book. It's a whole story in there. But he was projecting all his feelings of not good enough. He was actually photoshopping some of his own photos, so he was projecting that onto me. So his comments were really about him. They weren't about me.
Gotcha.
Chapter 7. Michelle, you're doing great. All right. I'm so excited. Every time I get an email from you or hear from you, I know that you're taking action, you're moving forward, you're facing your fears, and you're moving through it, and things are going to happen for you. But it's all up to you, and it's all in here. Just remember, it's got nothing to do with what's going on out there, in my opinion.
I think
You
we
wanna
are
say-
we are our own worst enemy.
We can also, that means we can also be our own best friend.
Oh,
That's what I have been working on, going from being my own worst enemy to my own best friend.
see, you have to like yourself first. See.
That's a choice. That's a decision. All right? And all the stuff, all the reasons I didn't like myself was because of what happened to me when I was 6 years old, when I didn't know what the hell was going on, when I took everything personally, when I created this whole self-image of myself as not lovable, not good enough, don't have what it takes. I'm walking around as an adult with a self-image that's the result of a 6-year-old's thinking.
I hear you.
All right, Janet's back. I want to hear what Michelle, you have anything else you want to say?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, good job. Let's hear from Janet. I think she's ready.
Oh, well, I unfortunately had to multitask getting in here, but I guess I mostly was just loving some of the analogies, particularly the one of an ocean liner. I just really love that. And how much effort we have to put in terms of like kind of reprogramming, because it's so powerful, all the negative and all the negative. I'm having a little bit of a bad connection, so let me know if you can hear me.
I
And
got
just
you.
how
You're good.
much is involved really in taking responsibility for really your own mental health, and that it just doesn't come natural, and how much one needs to put in there. And
May I reframe it? May I reframe it just a little bit?
please.
So instead of it takes a lot of effort, how about it takes a lot of awareness?
Yeah,
A
it
lot of
does. I
consciousness.
loved, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off.
A lot of consciousness, awareness, as opposed to effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, I like that. And just I guess effort, yeah, could be seen as negative. And the willingness to put the time in, and I'm just hearing, yeah, the time is the ocean liner, that to be willing to put that time in, because I'm trying to move the ocean liner, that's just great. So you can get it lined up to be ready and available for these things to happen. Love that. And then when you talked about the idea of using your left hand, just being uncomfortable, and I struggle with that. Like, if things come easy for me, great, but if they're uncomfortable, that's kind of where I struggle. I don't know how much time we have, but so a story that I tell about myself, whether it's true or not or whatever, is that because I have such bad ADHD, that XYZ, because I have that, so that would be something I would really like to not identify with so much.
So let's come up with a new acronym for ADHD, something positive.
Oh, I love that. Okay, I'm ready.
Well, you tell me what speaks to you. So
Okay.
ADHD. So A, achievement, determination, honor. ADHD, decisions. I mean, that'll be your assignment for next week. Come up, come
Yes, I
up with
love it.
come up with an an acronym that's a positive affirmation, because we have so much baggage. That's the thing about, I get it. The medical community, the psychological community, they have to, we have to have labels, we have to have categories, we need stuff for the whatever that guide is that everybody
Yes.
refers to. But you don't have to. We don't have to live with that. You can make up your own acronym. You can make up your own, because it's not to say that we don't have limitations. All right, I can't fly. There's certain things I can't do, but the things I can do will be so much more impactful. Will be so much more if I have a positive self-image, if I have a positive idea about myself, if I see myself differently.
You know what? I often will tell people that, how there's so many people who have ADHD who are really like superstars, right? So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the ADHD and I'm going to find qualities that are in myself that that maybe also are in many other people that have this issue,
Excellent.
and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to end with one of the things that happens to me. You were talking about like not judging yourself the way people see you. I kind of have the opposite problem, but you're talking about more with the artists, people like responding to your work. I mean, if I can take in the good people give me, and really like own it, it's usually better than the way I see me, and so a lot of times I have to say, well, they see me that way. I am that way. You just don't like own it, you know? So I don't know if that's making any sense, but
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. That's if you can own it, that's great. The only problem for me is it's like if I see here's the other thing. I didn't say this to Michelle, but I'll say it now. It's like I had to not take anything personally. Even the accolades I couldn't take personally, because if I took the success personally, it means I would have to take the failure personally. If that makes sense. Now, for me, if you can own, if you hear something positive, the thing I don't want you to do is own the negative. If you can just own the positive, great. But eventually, I found for me, Janet, I had to make the decision about myself, by myself, for myself. It was like, it doesn't really matter what they think. If they love me, that's great. If they don't love me, that's great. Because I get to decide for myself now. And it's not easy. This is not easy at all. And there's not a lot of, I mean, look at social media. It's like, how many likes did I get? Did they like me? Did they like my photos? Did like, I got so wrapped up in all of that. And it was like, for me, I had to, because I couldn't just own the positive. It was like, and that's where the true freedom is. I forget who said it. It might have been Maslow or somebody. True freedom is being free of the good opinion of other people. It's also being free of the bad
yeah.
opinion of other people.
No, I hear you, because I can be a people pleaser, and I'm really clear on times where I do something that's very difficult. I'm, really firm or opinionated or confrontational or whatever about something that I don't want to do. I don't want to do that, but I know I need to do it. I know they're not going to like me as much if I do it, but I'll know that I need to, that it's the right thing to do.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Gotcha.
you get to
Gotcha.
decide. And that's
Yeah.
that's what chapter 2 is. Chapter 2 is taking responsibility. And the first thing I have to take responsibility for is how I see myself, how I feel about myself, who I think I am. I can't blame my mother anymore. I can't blame my ex-girlfriends. I can't blame my clients. I can't blame the people on social media. It sucks. All right, guys, we're almost out of time. So anybody else want to say anything? All right, I want to play the song on the way out, and then we'll just come back and say goodbye. So let's just switch over to this. All right, guys. Anybody want to say anything before we wrap it up?
Two things. First of all, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It went really fast, and thank you to everybody for sharing your stories. And I loved seeing your photos with the music. That was very cool.
Thank you.
Nice, really nicely done.
Thank you. You know, that's being bigger than I think I am.
Yeah, really nicely done. So I'm leaving with a few things to think about for sure.
Great. We're here every week. Whenever you want to join us, you're welcome. If you want to tell your friends, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.